Silent confidence is more powerful than loud charm. This isn't just a statement. It's a truth that transforms how people perceive you, how they remember you, and how you walk through the world. There's a reason why some people command attention without saying a single word. Their very presence speaks. Their silence is intentional. Their stillness is strong. Silent confidence doesn't need applause, and it doesn't rely on approval. It's that quiet voice inside you that says, "I am enough," even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. You see, loud charm is often about performance. It's about being seen, being heard, making sure everyone knows you're in the room. It thrives on validation. It feeds off reactions. And while that kind of charm might win people over momentarily, it doesn't leave a lasting impact. It may entertain, but it doesn't inspire. It might impress, but it rarely builds deep trust. Silent confidence, on the other hand, doesn't perform. It just is, and because of that, it feels real. It's not rooted in ego, it's rooted in inner peace. When someone walks into a room with silent confidence, they don't need to dominate the conversation. They don't need to prove themselves. They are grounded, they are secure, and you feel it. You feel it in the way they carry themselves, with posture, presence, and poise. You feel it in their eyes, not searching, not pleading, but calm and clear. Their energy doesn't try to compete with anyone else's. It simply radiates from within. That kind of presence is rare, and that's why it's attractive. Silent confidence comes from doing the inner work. It comes from failing, growing, learning, and rising again. It's built through self-respect, through honoring your values even when it's inconvenient. It means you don't chase opportunities, people, attention, because you know what's meant for you will come. It means you don't need to fill every silence with words, because you understand that silence is powerful. It's in those pauses that people really hear you. It's in that stillness that your strength becomes visible. People who are silently confident know who they are. That's why they don't feel the need to prove it. They don't broadcast their accomplishments, they let their results speak. They don't dominate conversations to feel important. They ask questions, they listen, and when they speak, they say something that matters. They aren't afraid of being underestimated, because they don't need everyone to know their next move. They're focused on their own growth, not applause. This kind of confidence is also deeply respectful. It doesn't try to overshadow others. It holds space, it uplifts. It doesn't need to be the center of attention because it doesn't crave external light. It generates its own. And when you embody this kind of presence, people start to lean in. They start to wonder who you are, not because you told them, but because you didn't have to. There's mystery in restraint. There's allure in quiet power. One of the most beautiful things about silent confidence is that it's sustainable. Loud charm fades when the spotlight moves, but inner confidence stays, because it's not about what's happening around you, it's about what's anchored within you. It keeps you steady when the world gets noisy. It keeps you dignified when others are performing, and it reminds you that real power doesn't need to announce itself. In a world that constantly pressures you to shout, to sell yourself, to chase likes, views, and followers, being silently confident is an act of rebellion. And yet it's the very thing that makes you unforgettable, because while everyone else is trying to be seen, you already know you're worthy. That's the kind of presence people remember. That's the kind of energy that lingers long after you've left the room. So if you ever feel like you're not being noticed because you aren't the loudest or most extroverted, remember this: your presence doesn't have to shout to be heard. It doesn't have to sparkle to shine. You don't need to demand space when you know you already belong. Silent confidence is not about hiding. It's about owning who you are without asking permission, and that is far more powerful than any performance. Listening is magnetic. It makes people feel seen. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, those who genuinely take the time to listen become rare and deeply attractive. There's a quiet power in presence, in giving someone your undivided attention, in letting them feel like, for a moment, they are the most important person in the room. That kind of focus is disarming. It doesn't shout, it doesn't impress, but it creates a space so comforting and safe that people naturally gravitate toward it, because let's face it, most people are used to being talked over, ignored, or half heard. So when you truly listen, you stand out, not with noise but with stillness. Real listening goes beyond hearing words. It's about tuning into the emotion behind the message. It's about reading between the lines. It's about catching what's not being said. That kind of attentiveness makes people feel validated, respected, and understood. And when people feel understood, they feel connected. That connection becomes your superpower. It draws people closer, it builds trust, it creates a presence that people want to be around, not because you're loud, not because you're flashy, but because you make them feel something most never do, truly seen. There's something incredibly graceful about someone who listens without interrupting, without preparing their response while the other person is still speaking. Instead, they hold space, they absorb. They allow the other person to express themselves fully, and when they finally do speak, their words are thoughtful, measured, and intentional. That balance between silence and speech is not only attractive, it's powerful. The truth is, anyone can speak. It takes no special skill to talk about yourself, to share opinions, to push your agenda, but listening, that requires discipline, humility, empathy. When you listen, you make it about the other person. You shift the spotlight, and in that act, you become unforgettable, not because you were the star of the moment, but because you allowed someone else to shine. And that's something people never forget. People may not remember everything you say, but they will always remember how you made them feel, and listening makes people feel worthy. When you give someone your attention, real, focused attention, you're sending a message without saying a word, you matter. That message leaves a deeper impression than charm, humor, or good looks ever could, because connection isn't built through noise, it's built through presence. Listening also reflects self-assurance. When you listen, you're not rushing to prove your intelligence, your experience, or your status. You're not waiting for your turn to speak. You're not threatened by silence. You're simply present. That calmness, that patience, that grounded energy is what makes you silently attractive. It shows you're secure enough in yourself not to dominate the conversation. And that security becomes magnetic. When you walk through the world as a listener, you become a student of people. You begin to understand them, not just on the surface, but on a deeper level, and that insight gives you influence. You know how to respond, how to support, how to show up in ways that others don't. People will start coming to you, not just for advice, but for presence, because they know when they talk to you, they'll be heard. They'll be respected. They won't be judged or dismissed. Listening also teaches you more than speaking ever will. You learn about emotions, intentions, fears, dreams, and truths. You begin to see what others miss. You start to understand what motivates people, and that knowledge is power. It helps you build better relationships, make smarter decisions, and lead with empathy, all because you chose to listen rather than speak. So if you ever feel the pressure to be louder, to say more, to fill the silence, pause. Remember that your quiet attention can speak volumes, that your listening ear can be more powerful than 1,000 words. You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to be the most impactful. Sometimes the most unforgettable energy comes from those who simply know how to be present. Listening is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's presence in its purest form, and in a world full of noise, that presence is deeply, silently, and irresistibly attractive. Protecting your peace makes you glow differently. There's a distinct kind of strength that radiates from people who guard their energy. You can feel it the moment they walk into a room, the calm in their eyes, the steadiness in their breath, the softness in their presence that isn't weak but powerful. These are the people who no longer allow chaos to have a seat at their table. They've made a conscious choice to protect their mental, emotional, and spiritual space. And in doing so, they've cultivated an inner glow that no makeup, no filter, no outer validation can replicate. We live in a world that is constantly noisier, opinions flying everywhere, pressure mounting from every direction. people projecting their fears and insecurities onto others, and drama dressing itself up as connection. And if you're not careful, that noise can start living inside you. You'll begin to internalize what doesn't belong to you. You'll carry burdens that aren't yours to hold. That's why protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. When you do, you give yourself the clarity to separate what's true from what's just noise. The people who shine the brightest are not always the ones in the spotlight. They are the ones who have done the quiet, difficult work of learning what disturbs their soul and intentionally walking away from it. They've chosen silence over chaos, boundaries over approval, solitude over superficial connection, and that decision changes everything. It shifts the way you speak, the way you respond, the way you move. It gives you power, not over others, but over yourself. When you protect your peace, you're no longer reactive. You no longer allow every text message, every piece of gossip, every online comment, or every negative opinion to steal your attention. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. You understand that not everything deserves your time, your energy, or your spirit, and that discernment becomes one of your most attractive qualities. People sense it. They feel the difference. You're not frantic. You're not caught in a spiral of trying to prove yourself or keep up with anyone else. You're calm, you're intentional, you're present, that energy. It's rare, and rare is always attractive. When you glow from within, people might not always understand it, but they will respect it, even if they don't know why. Protecting your peace also means protecting your boundaries. It means saying no without guilt. It means walking away from conversations that drain you. It means refusing to let toxic people live rent-free in your head. It means recognizing when something is costing you your joy and letting it go. You don't owe anyone access to you. Peace is expensive, and once you've earned it, you stop giving it away cheaply. There's a version of you that exists beyond burnout, beyond people pleasing, beyond emotional exhaustion, and that version only emerges when you protect your energy like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. The quality of your life is a reflection of the quality of your inner world, and when your inner world is calm, your outer world begins to shift. You begin to attract people and opportunities that resonate with your energy. You begin to move through life with more grace and less resistance. When your peace is protected, your presence becomes healing. People feel safer around you, not because you fix them, but because your energy doesn't harm them. You become a reminder of what's possible, a life that isn't dictated by drama, noise, or chaos, but by purpose, clarity, and stillness. It takes courage to protect your peace in a world that profits off your distraction and confusion. It takes boldness to say no more when everyone else says just deal with it. But that courage creates a foundation of inner strength, and that strength builds a kind of beauty that can't be faked. It's not loud, but it's unforgettable. So when you choose peace, know that you are choosing power, not the kind that dominates or controls, but the kind that stands quietly, confidently, and unshakably in its truth. That kind of power doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't need to prove, it simply is, and that is what makes you glow differently. Every step you take, every word you speak, and every choice you make carries a kind of energy, and when you move with purpose, that energy becomes magnetic. There's something deeply captivating about people who know who they are and what they want. You can feel it. It's in the way they walk into a room, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. They're not trying to impress anyone. They don't need to. Their presence does the work for them. Purpose doesn't have to be declared. It reveals itself in how you carry yourself, how you make decisions, and how you treat others. And that kind of clarity is rare. That kind of direction is powerful. People who move with purpose don't wander aimlessly through life. They aren't perfect, and they're not always sure of the next step, but they move anyway, with intention. Even when they're uncertain, they're grounded in values. Even when plans change, they pivot without losing themselves. That's what makes them so compelling. You look at them and think, they know where they're going. And in a world where so many are lost in comparison, distraction, and doubt, that kind of inner navigation stands out. Moving with purpose isn't about hustling nonstop or having everything figured out. It's about alignment. It's about making decisions from a place of clarity and knowing. When you know your why you wake up, why you show up, why you care, you stop wasting time on things that don't align with your path. You start saying no to what drains you and yes to what fuels you. Your life becomes more intentional and your energy becomes more focused. People notice that, they feel that, and they're drawn to it. Purpose gives your actions meaning. You're not just working a job, you're building a future. You're not just having conversations. You're making impact. You're not just existing. You're living on mission. That's why people who move with purpose seem to glow differently. It's not just confidence. It's clarity. They've stopped asking for permission. They've stopped waiting to be chosen. They've chosen themselves. And when you operate from that space, you become quietly powerful. You don't have to scream your goals to the world when you're walking toward them every day. You don't have to convince anyone of your value when you live it through your actions. Purpose makes you consistent, and consistency makes you credible. People begin to respect you not just for your ambition, but for your discipline, not just for your dreams, but for your follow-through. That kind of commitment is rare, and people are naturally attracted to what's rare. When you move with purpose, even your silence speaks. You're not easily shaken. You're not distracted by trends or the noise of public opinion. You know what matters to you, and you stay focused on that. Your time becomes sacred. Your peace becomes a priority. You're no longer available for things that are beneath your vision. That kind of discernment creates a different kind of presence, one that commands respect even without demanding it. Purpose also helps you move through pain differently. You don't fall apart when things get hard. You adapt, you shift, you grow, because your mission is bigger than your discomfort. That kind of resilience isn't loud, but it's deeply inspiring. People who witness your journey feel your strength, even if you never speak of it. Your actions begin to inspire others to find their own path. That's the true power of living on purpose. You give others permission to do the same, and here's what's truly beautiful: purpose evolves. You don't need to have all the answers to move forward. You just need to be aligned with your values. Even if the vision changes, even if the road twists and turns, your inner compass will guide you. As long as you keep asking, does this align with who I'm becoming, you'll never be lost. So keep moving with purpose. Let your presence speak before you do. Let your intentions shape your path. Let your energy declare your direction. You don't need to convince the world that you're going somewhere important. Just walk like you already are, and eventually the world will follow. Purpose doesn't just make you attractive, it makes you unstoppable. Being kind isn't about being soft, it's about being strong enough to stay gentle in a world that often forgets how. But kindness without boundaries is how you lose yourself. That's why the most silently attractive people are those who know how to blend both. They show compassion, empathy, and grace, but they also know when to say no, when to walk away, and when to protect their own energy. This balance is rare, and that's why it captivates. It's not about being liked. It's about being respected. It's not about pleasing others. It's about honoring yourself. When someone carries both kindness and boundaries, you feel safe with them. You know they won't judge you, but they also won't tolerate disrespect. You know they'll listen, but they won't let you drain them. That stability is magnetic. It draws people in, not because you're trying to impress them, but because your self-respect makes others rise to your standard. You become someone others admire not just for your warmth, but for your strength. Kindness becomes more powerful when it's backed by clarity. When you're clear on what you value, what you deserve, and what you're no longer willing to entertain, your kindness becomes intentional, not performative. You're not being nice out of fear or habit. You're being kind because it aligns with your character, but you also know where kindness ends and self-sacrifice begins, and you're no longer available for anything that costs you your peace, your worth, or your joy. People often mistake kindness for weakness. They assume if you're generous with your heart, you must be easy to manipulate. But quietly powerful people know better. They've been taken for granted before. They've learned that kindness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. So now they love with depth, but not desperation. They give freely, but not endlessly. They forgive, but they don't forget the lesson. This kind of love is mature. This kind of energy is rare. When you combine kindness with boundaries, your relationships transform. You're no longer performing for connection. You're not chasing approval. You're not begging for love. You're offering presence, but only to those who honor it. You begin to attract people who value you not for what you do for them, but for who you are, because the truth is, your boundaries teach others how to treat you. And when you respect yourself enough to say, "This is what I allow, and this is what I don't," you create space for real love, not attachment, not convenience, but love rooted in mutual respect. There's also elegance in how you enforce those boundaries. You don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to explain endlessly. You don't need to defend your worth. Quiet people with clear boundaries don't yell. They just step back. They don't argue with chaos. They protect their peace. That quiet exit says more than a loud confrontation ever could. And that dignity, that grace, it leaves a lasting impression. The world is full of noise, people shouting, comparing, competing. But kindness paired with boundaries is a different kind of power. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It simply shines. It speaks with intention. It gives with purpose. It knows when to engage and when to walk away. That kind of presence doesn't need validation. It doesn't need an audience. It just is, and people are drawn to it, because deep down we all crave that kind of authenticity. When you are both kind and boundaried, you become whole. You stop fragmenting yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You stop softening your truth to keep the peace. You stop abandoning yourself to earn love. Instead, you become someone who can offer deep compassion while still saying, "This is enough." You become someone who leads with heart, but not at the cost of your soul. So if you've ever felt like you're too kind for this world, don't change your kindness. Strengthen your boundaries. Let your kindness be a gift, not a burden. Let it come from fullness, not from fear. And remember, the most attractive people aren't the ones who say yes to everyone. They're the ones who know when to say yes to others, and when to say yes to themselves. That balance isn't just healthy. It's powerful, it's radiant, it's unforgettable. Silently attractive people don't react. They respond. They've mastered their emotions in a way that gives them power without the need to raise their voice, explain themselves unnecessarily, or defend their worth. Emotional maturity is one of the most magnetic qualities a person can possess. It doesn't scream for attention, but it always leaves an impression. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending you don't feel. It's about understanding those emotions, regulating them, and choosing how and when to express them. That choice made in calm, not chaos, is where the power lies. In a world where people are constantly reacting, oversharing, and broadcasting every high and low, someone who stays composed becomes instantly noticeable. It's not because they're cold or detached, it's because they've chosen to be steady. They've realized that reacting out of anger, fear, or insecurity never brings peace. So they pause, they breathe, they process, then they respond. That pause, so small, so subtle, is what sets them apart. It's what makes them feel grounded, unshakable, and deeply safe to be around. When you master your emotions, you become the calm in the storm. While others spiral, you observe. While others get triggered, you hold space. That doesn't mean you're emotionless, quite the opposite. It means you feel deeply, but you're not ruled by those feelings. You have emotional discipline, and that discipline isn't just admirable, it's attractive. It says to the world, "I'm in control of me." And that kind of energy is rare. People who haven't mastered their emotions often project their pain onto others. They lash out when they're hurt. They shut down when they feel vulnerable. They blame, they deflect, they escape. But those who have done the inner work don't react that way. They own their feelings. They communicate with clarity. They don't play games. They don't need to manipulate or guilt others to feel heard. Their emotional intelligence allows them to navigate hard conversations with softness and strength at the same time. There's something undeniably attractive about someone who doesn't let external chaos dictate their inner state. When someone insults them, they don't retaliate, they remain composed. When they're disappointed, they don't explode, they express. When they feel misunderstood, they don't shut down, they clarify. That kind of emotional maturity creates trust. It creates stability, and in a world full of emotional volatility, that kind of presence is a magnet. Mastering your emotions also means you know your triggers. You understand where your pain comes from. You've looked inward enough to know what wounds are still healing, and because of that awareness, you don't use others as an emotional dumping ground. You don't expect people to save you, fix you, or carry you. You take responsibility for your own healing, and that kind of accountability is deeply attractive. This emotional strength is quiet, it's not performative, it doesn't need to prove anything, it just shows up consistently, calmly, and intentionally. People may not always know how to describe it, but they feel it. They feel the difference in your tone, your timing, your reactions. They notice how you handle conflict, how you deal with setbacks, how you treat others in moments of tension. And that is where silent attraction lies, not in what you say, but in how you make people feel, especially when emotions run high. Being emotionally mature doesn't mean you never feel hurt, anger, sadness, or fear. It means you've learned how to sit with those emotions without letting them take control. You've created space between stimulus and response, and in that space, you choose growth over reaction. That habit, cultivated over time, builds a presence that doesn't fade. It's not tied to moods or moments, it's steady, it's safe, it's radiant. So if you want to be quietly magnetic, start with mastering your emotional world. Heal what hurts, understand your patterns, learn to respond, not react. Let your calm speak louder than your frustration. Let your clarity speak louder than your confusion. Let your grounded presence be your loudest message. Because emotional maturity is not just about how you feel, it's about how you treat others when you're not feeling your best. And that kind of integrity is unforgettable. You read, you learn, you evolve, and that evolution makes you radiant in a way that nothing else can. Growth isn't loud. It doesn't happen under a spotlight. It happens in quiet moments, when no one is watching, when no one is cheering you on, and when you're choosing to rise instead of remain. The most silently attractive people are those who are committed to becoming better, not to prove anything, not to impress anyone, but because they know they're worth the investment. There's something deeply magnetic about someone who prioritizes personal growth. You can see it in their eyes, in the way they speak, in the way they treat people, and in how they carry themselves. Growth changes your energy. It deepens your presence. People who prioritize growth don't stay stuck in old stories. They don't let the past define them. They don't make excuses for poor behavior or cling to outdated beliefs just because it's comfortable. They seek truth, even when it's uncomfortable. They ask hard questions. They take accountability. They're willing to admit, I didn't know better then, but I'm learning now. That kind of humility is powerful. It doesn't shout for attention, but it commands respect. The journey of becoming isn't always beautiful. Growth is messy. It's hard. It requires you to look in the mirror and be honest about what's not working. It asks you to face your fears, break your patterns, and sometimes walk away from things you once thought you'd never live without. But silently attractive people understand that comfort zones are cages. They're not afraid to outgrow people, places, or versions of themselves. They're loyal to their evolution, even when it's lonely. That loyalty to becoming the best version of themselves radiates. It shows up in their energy, their words, their boundaries, their goals, and people feel that. You don't need to announce your growth for it to be real. You don't have to post every milestone or prove your progress. When you're truly growing, it becomes part of your energy. People sense that you're not the same person you were last year, last month, or even last week. They see how your priorities have shifted. They hear it in how you speak. They notice the calm in your responses. They feel the depth in your presence. That transformation can't be faked. It can't be bought. It can only be earned. Silently attractive people are students of life. They don't think they know it all. In fact, the more they grow, the more they realize how much more there is to learn. They read, they listen, they reflect. They surround themselves with people who challenge them to be better, not just those who make them feel comfortable. They don't fear feedback. They welcome it. Not all of it, but the kind that calm th and love. And when they fall short, they take it as a lesson, not a label. Growth also brings grace. When you've done the inner work, you stop judging others for not being where you are. You recognize that everyone is on their own journey. You become more compassionate, more patient, more understanding. That emotional intelligence makes you deeply attractive, not just romantically, but as a human being. People want to be around someone who makes them feel safe to grow too. Your evolution gives others permission to start their own. Ease from places of trugatable. Choosing growth also means you stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for wanting more, being different, or dreaming bigger. You understand that you're allowed to evolve without explaining yourself. Not everyone will understand your journey, and that's okay. You don't need approval for your growth, you just need to honor it. And when you do, you begin to live with a quiet confidence, a kind of self-respect that says, I may not be there yet, but I'm on my way, and that matters. What makes this habit so powerful is that it never ends. There's no final destination. You're always learning, always stretching, always becoming, and that process makes you magnetic. Because people are drawn to those who are real, who are evolving, and who never settle for being less than what they're capable of. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be committed, and that commitment, that intentional growth, becomes the silent force behind your presence. It makes you glow differently. It makes you stand out. It makes you unfold.